He didn't tell anyone. No goodbye, no announcement, no cryptic social media posts or long-winded captions begging for attention. He just vanished. 30 days. 30 days without answering texts, without scrolling through anyone's stories, 30 days without checking if she had moved on, without wondering if they were still talking about him. And in those 30 days, something happened. Something radical. He didn't just change, he became. Because sometimes to transform, you don't need applause, you need silence. You don't need a savior, you need solitude. This is the story of what happens when a man stops chasing validation and starts chasing himself. It all started after that final conversation, you know the kind. The one where the words are few, but the silence is heavy, with everything that went unsaid. She didn't have to yell. She didn't even need to cry. The way she looked at him, that quiet resignation in her eyes, said more than 1,000 arguments ever could. He felt it. That aching pit in his stomach, that strange mix of loss and relief, as if something sacred had died and something dangerous had been born in its place. It wasn't just about her. It was about him. Who he had been, who he was becoming, and who he had forgotten to be. In the weeks before he disappeared, he was a ghost of himself, always waiting for a message, always calculating his value based on the reaction he got. One emoji too few and he'd spiral. A late reply and he'd start crafting worst-case scenarios. His life was no longer his. It belonged to the algorithms, to the half-interested texts, to the attention he craved but never truly received. He didn't realize how deep he had sunk, not until he stood in front of the mirror one night and saw a man who didn't recognize his own eyes. They were tired, not just physically, but soul-deep tired, the kind of tired that sleep can't fix. The kind of tired that comes from abandoning yourself in order to be enough for someone else. That's when the voice in him whispered, "What if you just left? Not forever, just long enough to find the man beneath the noise." So he packed a bag, deleted the apps, turned off the phone, and he left. The first few days were brutal. No dopamine from notifications, no distractions from discomfort, just silence. That silence, it wasn't peaceful. Not at first, it screamed. It echoed with old regrets and stupid things he said in moments of insecurity. It showed him everything he had buried beneath fake confidence and fragile pride. But slowly, painfully, he leaned into it. He started writing again. Not for likes, not for validation, but for truth. He wrote letters he'd never send to her, to the friends he lost, to the man he used to be. He sat by rivers and watched the way the water moved, not in a rush, but always forward, always flowing, always adapting. He realized he had been trying so hard to force his life to work, forcing connection, forcing affection, forcing relevance, but nothing real is forced. And that broke him open. By day 10, something shifted. He stopped checking the time, stopped wondering what she was doing. He started asking deeper questions. Who am I without her? Who am I when no one is watching? Who do I become when I'm no longer trying to impress anyone? He thought about the boy he used to be, the one who had dreams so loud the world couldn't quiet him, the boy who wanted to build things, to create, to lead, to protect, to matter. Somewhere along the way, that boy got lost in the noise, replaced by a man constantly seeking approval, constantly trying to be chosen. He remembered something his grandfather once told him. Never chase someone who can't see your worth. That's how kings become servants. That line stuck with him. He had been a servant to his own fear of being alone. And now, alone in a cabin deep in the woods with no internet and no one to impress, he was starting to remember his crown. By day 14, he started moving differently. He woke up early, not because he had to, but because the mornings had something sacred in them. The kind of quiet that feels like the world is listening. He started running. Not far at first, just enough to feel his heartbeat again, to feel alive. He cooked his own meals, simple things, but nourishing. He read books, actual books, not summaries or clickbait wisdom. He found Marcus Aurelius and Rumi and Viktor Frankl, and their words didn't just inform him, they reformed him. He read, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one," Marcus Aurelius. And for the first time, he didn't just read it, he felt it. It wasn't about being liked anymore. It was about being honorable, not just successful, significant. By day 20, the dreams returned. Not the ones where he imagined getting back with her, not the ones where he imagined her missing him, but dreams where he was building, creating something that mattered, helping others rise, being the man who walks into a room and elevates the atmosphere just by being there. He wasn't looking back anymore, he was looking within. And what he saw there, it wasn't perfect, but it was powerful. Let me tell you a story. There's an ancient tale of a samurai who, after losing everything in a war, exiled himself to the mountains. Everyone assumed he died, but he didn't. He trained, he meditated, he rebuilt himself not just as a warrior, but as a philosopher, a protector of peace, a man whose sword was only drawn in defense of the innocent. Years later, when bandits came to his village, the people had no one to turn to. Then, just when all hope seemed lost, he returned. Not as the man he was, but as the man he chose to become. Silent, focused, formidable, free. This man, our man, was walking a similar path. He wasn't running away. He was running towards himself. By day 25, something crazy happened. He laughed, a real laugh, the kind that comes from your belly, not your head, the kind that reminds you you're not broken, you're just becoming. And that night he looked at himself in the mirror again, same eyes, but this time there was fire behind them, conviction, not because someone believed in him, but because he finally believed in himself. And when you believe in yourself, not the social media version, but the real, raw, tested version, something changes. You stop needing to be understood. You stop begging for closure. You stop chasing what was never yours to begin with. Because you realize some people didn't reject you. They just couldn't reach your depth. By day 30, he came back, not to impress, not to prove anything, but to live. He walked differently, spoke slower, listened more. He didn't tell people about the journey. They felt it. She saw him one day. Same street, same city, different man. And in her eyes, for just a flicker of a moment, there was something familiar. Curiosity, regret, maybe even respect. But he didn't flinch. He didn't look away. He didn't chase, because now, finally, he knew he was never meant to be understood by those still at war with themselves. He didn't need to be chosen anymore. He chose himself. You see, disappearing isn't about running away. It's about reclaiming your time, your energy, your identity. It's about stepping back so you can rise higher than anyone ever expected, including you. So, if you're feeling lost, if you're in pain, don't numb it. Don't chase someone to fill it. Don't post about it hoping for sympathy. Disappear, not to punish them, but to discover you. Spend 30 days not chasing her, not checking who viewed your story, not looking for signs that you still matter. You already do, you just forgot. This is only the beginning of his transformation. But the next part? That's where everything shifts. Because a man who walks back into the world after 30 days in the dark isn't the same man who walked out. And what he does next, that changes everything. There's a moment, right after the silence, right after the clarity, where a man sees the world with new eyes. The same city that once suffocated him now feels strangely open. The same faces he used to shrink around now hold no power over him. He doesn't walk faster, he doesn't walk slower, he walks deliberately. Because now he understands something profound. The world does not change when you disappear. You do, and when you change, the world has no choice but to meet the man you've become. He didn't return to prove anything. That was the old him, the man addicted to perception, to being seen, to feeling valuable through the lens of others. This version of him, he was different, detached, not in a cold, bitter way, but in a way that said, I'm no longer negotiating my worth with the outside world. He met old friends again. They noticed it immediately. It wasn't his clothes, not his words, but the weight he carried in his presence. One friend said, man, you're calm now, like you're not chasing anything anymore. He just smiled, because they didn't know the battles he fought in those 30 days. They didn't know about the nights he stayed awake confronting the hollow parts of himself. The shadows he met face to face, the wounds he no longer tried to cover with distractions. You see, the world tells men to be strong, but it never tells them how. So most men fake it. They lift more, earn more, sleep around more, flex louder, but they never go inward. And that's what he did in those 30 days. He confronted the parts of him that never healed. The boy inside who felt abandoned. The man who chased affection because he didn't know how to sit with himself. The people pleaser who twisted himself just to be enough. He stopped performing and started becoming. There's something ancient about this process, something sacred. In every warrior culture, there's a ritual, the rite of passage. Young men are taken into isolation, into the forest, into the mountains, away from everything and everyone they know. Why? Because manhood isn't given, it's forged. Not in public, not in applause, but in painful solitude. That's what those 30 days were, a self-imposed rite of passage. He didn't know it at the time, but he had stripped away everything the world told him he should be and found what he was meant to be. By the second week after his return, his life didn't just look different, it operated differently. He didn't answer calls right away, not out of rudeness, but out of intention. He learned how to say no without apology. He started guarding his time like it was sacred because now he knew it was. Women noticed, not because he tried harder, but because he stopped trying at all. Confidence isn't about saying, look at me. It's about saying, I see me, and that's enough. And that energy, it's magnetic. One day, he ran into someone new, not someone he chased, just someone he crossed paths with. She was confident, intelligent. Her eyes didn't just see, they observed. She asked him, you seem grounded, like you've been through something. He didn't try to impress her. He didn't launch into stories. He just said, yeah, I've been through myself. And for the first time in a long time, he saw someone lean in, not because of how he looked or what he had, but because of who he had become. But here's the twist most people don't expect after transformation. It's lonelier at first, not because you're alone, but because fewer people can meet you at your new level. You've outgrown drama. Small talk drains you. You'd rather have one honest conversation than 1,000 fake interactions. He lost friends, or more accurately, he realized they were never really friends. He stopped responding to the ones who only reached out when they needed something. He pulled back from the ones who still lived for validation. He wasn't rude, just selective, because now he valued peace over popularity. He started building again, not just habits, but legacy. He returned to that old project he once believed in, the app he shelved, the blog he abandoned, the vision he told himself wasn't realistic. But now, he wasn't afraid to fail, because failure wasn't an identity anymore. It was a phase, a lesson, a necessary step towards something greater. That's when something amazing happened. He started winning, not overnight, not dramatically, but consistently. Because he was no longer self-sabotaging, no longer procrastinating because of fear, no longer waiting for someone to believe in him. He had become his own momentum. And then, almost inevitably, she came back. Not in a dramatic way, no tearful apology, just a simple message. Hey, I saw something that reminded me of you. He stared at the screen. The old him would have jumped, would have analyzed every word, would have crafted the perfect response. But this version of him, he waited. Not to play games, but because he didn't need it anymore. He responded calmly, warmly, but without invitation. He didn't open the door, he acknowledged the knock, because sometimes when you grow, people from your past will reappear. Not because they changed, but because you did. They feel it, they sense it. The energy that once needed them now doesn't. And that can be magnetic or terrifying. Let me tell you about Nelson Mandela. 27 years in prison. Almost 3 decades in isolation. But he didn't come out bitter. He didn't seek revenge. He didn't grovel or beg for recognition. He walked out with dignity, with clarity, with vision, because true transformation is quiet. You don't scream about it. You embody it. Mandela said, do not judge me by my success. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again. This man, the one who disappeared for 30 days, he didn't just get back up. He rose. Let's be honest, most men never take 30 days in solitude. Why? Because it's terrifying to be alone with yourself, to face the mirror without distraction, to realize that the life you've been living wasn't chosen, it was copied. But the brave ones, they disappear, not to escape, but to encounter, to wrestle their demons, to meet their pain, to rebuild, not resume. Now here's what changed in him most of all. He stopped begging for access to people who were emotionally unavailable. He stopped trying to explain his worth. He stopped loving people harder than they loved themselves. Instead, he became the type of man who made peace his baseline. The type of man who didn't just talk about boundaries, he lived them. The type of man who could sit in a room full of chaos and remain still. The type of man who, when people met him, they didn't say, "He's impressive." They said, "He's anchored." Here's a secret most people won't tell you. Healing doesn't make you louder. It makes you quieter, more intentional, less reactive, more sovereign. That was him now. And the relationships that started entering his life, they were different too. No more one-sided dynamics. No more being the emotional caretaker. No more masking pain with performance. He attracted people who respected themselves. And because of that, they respected him. Let's return to you now. If you've ever felt like you're constantly chasing something, her attention, his approval, their validation, stop, just stop. Take 30 days. Disappear, not in bitterness, not in anger, but in reclamation. Start your own rite of passage. No posts, no announcements, no explanations, just go. Turn inward, shut out the noise, meet yourself, let the pain surface, let the truth hit, let the illusions fall away. And when they ask where you went, you'll smile and say, "I was never gone. I was just becoming." The man who disappeared, he's no longer trying to be chosen. He's choosing where to place his energy, who gets his time, what he's building, and most of all, who he's becoming every damn day. Because in those 30 days, he learned something unforgettable. The man you become in private is the man they will never forget in public. He no longer needed the world to understand him because now he understood himself. And when a man reaches that place where silence doesn't scare him, where his solitude feeds him, where validation feels like a whisper, not a drug, that man is no longer part of the crowd. He becomes the exception. In the weeks that followed his return, the shift was undeniable. He walked into places that once made him feel small, and now the wall seemed to open before him. Not because they changed, but because he did. He spoke less, but when he did, people listened. Not because he raised his voice, but because he had depth behind his words. He no longer sought permission to be powerful. He simply was. And that kind of power, it's unteachable, unmistakable, unshakable. He no longer chased, he moved. He moved toward his purpose, toward the vision he once buried beneath heartbreak and hesitation, toward the life that had been whispering to him all along. People began to ask, "What happened to you, man?" He didn't try to explain, because transformation isn't explained, it's witnessed. He wasn't healed because someone apologized. He was healed because he decided to be. He wasn't stronger because life got easier. He was stronger because he stopped waiting for easy. He became dangerous, but not in the way most think. Not reckless, not chaotic, not destructive. He became dangerous because he was no longer afraid to walk alone, because he could be rejected and still rise, because he could be left behind and still move forward, because he could lose everything he once thought he needed and still stand in his power. That kind of man, you can't control him. You can't manipulate him. You can't break him with silence or absence or mind games, because his center of gravity is no longer external. It's internal, rooted, unshakable. One evening, weeks after his return, he stood on his balcony watching the sunset. Same sky, same city, same world, but for the first time, he felt whole. He wasn't healed completely. Healing isn't a destination. It's a discipline, a daily decision. But he had tasted something real. And once you taste your own power, you never settle again. Let me take you back in time. Ancient Sparta. When a boy turned 7, he was taken from his family and placed into the agoge, the brutal military training system that would shape him into a warrior. No comfort, no safety, only discipline, discomfort, and becoming. Why? Because warriors are not built in comfort. They are built in isolation, in resistance, in the fire of their own fears. Insistence in the fire of their business ventures, in the fire of their own fear. This man, we'll call him the modern Spartan, went through his own agoge, not with swords, but with silence, not with war, but with truth. And he emerged not just changed, he emerged reborn. There was a time he would have begged for closure. Now he realized that closure is a luxury for those who can't sit with mystery. He no longer needed answers from others. He had found his own. And the answers weren't in their words. They were in his wounds, in the patterns he finally saw, in the love he gave to others that he now started pouring into himself. He no longer confused access with intimacy. He no longer saw attention as affection. He no longer mistook being chosen as being loved, because now he knew you don't have to be chased to be worthy. You don't have to be understood to be real. You don't have to be adored to be enough. He started mentoring younger men, not by preaching, but by living. He didn't tell them to become alpha or to chase success as a replacement for healing. He told them the truth. Find yourself in the dark, hold your own hand when it's shaking, become the man you needed when you were breaking. And they listened, because he didn't speak from ego, he spoke from experience. And men like that, they start revolutions without ever raising their voice. Then came the greatest test. A new woman, different, real, intelligent, emotionally available. She saw him. Not the version he posted, not the image he curated, him. And he felt it again, that old fear. The part of him that once asked, will I be enough? But this time he had an answer. If I have to become someone else to keep her, she's not mine to begin with. So he stayed rooted. He didn't perform. He didn't impress. He simply showed up. And she met him there. Not as a savior, not as a solution, but as a mirror. Two whole people, no chasing, just choosing. This is where the story completes the circle, because 30 days ago, he disappeared, heartbroken, lost, unseen. And now he had returned, not just with clarity, but with command. Command of his emotions, command of his energy, command of his direction. He wasn't looking for love to complete him. He was creating a life that amplified him. That's the difference. And that difference, it changes everything. Let me leave you with this. There's a quote by Joseph Campbell. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Most people spend their lives avoiding that cave, avoiding the silence, avoiding the mirror, avoiding themselves. But the man who disappears for 30 days, who cuts the noise, who sits with the chaos inside him, who walks through the cave anyway, he doesn't just find treasure, he becomes it. So if you're listening to this and something inside you is stirring, that's not motivation. That's your soul waking up. It's telling you disappear. Not to run, but to remember. Not to escape, but to embody. Not to forget who you are, but to finally meet him. And when you do, don't tell anyone. Just walk back in silence. Let your presence say what your words never could. Let them wonder. Let them watch. Let them ask, who is this man? Because the answer isn't for them. It's for you. And you'll know deep in your bones, I am the man who walked through fire and came back forged. Thank you for walking through this journey. If this spoke to something deep within you, it's not an accident. It's a call. One only a few will answer. Will you be one of them? Disappear for 30 days. Rebuild your mind. Reclaim your worth and return with eyes that no longer look back. Because once you taste your own greatness, you will never beg for crumbs again. If this message resonated with you, if it sparked something deep within or reminded you of the power you hold, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button to let us know it moved you. Drop a comment below and tell us what part of the journey hit hardest for you. We read every single one. And if you're on a path of growth, healing, and becoming your strongest self, subscribe to the channel and join a community that's walking this path with you. Your transformation starts here. Let's rise together.